Hi, it's Corrine. Thanks so much for stopping by. Today I am making a couple of cards that were super fun because they're a little bit different than my normal style. I'm using some Altenew products, and I love this little retro chair and plant. One of the products I'm using is the Cozy Spaces, and this is where you find this cute little lampshade chairs. I love this inspiration and instruction guide that they give with their products. I pulled out some Pink Fresh Studios inks. I have the ink cubes for them, and I pulled out some Concord and Ninth cardstock. I like to use my little swatch book to pick out my colors. So I'm starting with a piece of hammer mill. This is 80 pound, and I'm going to stamp out the flower, the leaves. I wanted, instead of going with traditional green, I chose blues because I knew I was going to do an orange lampshade, so I thought the blue would go nicely with that. So I'm stamping out my first color, and for that one I'm using, let's see here, I believe that one was Slumber. If you want to know specifically, I can look it up and let you know. And I did that twice. I went ahead and cleaned off my stamp and put it right back on the stamp pocket. And now this one here is Blue Jay. It's a little bit darker. So each level I went a little bit darker. And this one I only stamped once because I thought it was intense enough to show the difference. And you really do have to get your head above it to line it up correctly, but it is easy to line up. And so for this one, I'm using Stargazer. Stamp that down twice. This is such a pretty stamp set. I absolutely am a huge fan of Altenew's products. And I do like that they kind of went out of the norm with this stamp set, with the retro chairs, and super cute. So I did also stamp the stem of the plant in blue, and now I'm using a light brown and a medium brown for my basket. It has a layering stamp that gives it like that weaved basket look, and it just turns out so cute. So for this base, I stamped it quite a few times. I wanted it a little bit darker, and I also wanted to give it a little extra shading on one side as opposed to the other. So I just stamped up the one side a little, and it just gives it just a little bit of variation. So just cleaning my stamps as we go. And I was super happy with how that turned out. So now I pulled out my pieces. I do have to refer to my instruction guide that they give. That is so handy, but it'll show you each layer. So I wanted to do two different greens. I believe I did avocado and artichoke. Again, these are all Concord and Ninth cardstocks. And then I used nutmeg for the legs. And I pulled out my little craft mat and just started gluing everything down. I'm using a fine tip bottle. Again, referring to my instructions quite often. Once you put them together, though, you kind of have a rhythm. I did make several others that I ended up not using, that I just threw back into the stamp pocket so I can have them for a future project if I wanted. But reverse tweezers are really handy to have. And you could do the base of the chair all one color. I wanted that little bit of difference. This piece of cardstock was just from my stash. It's just kind of a cream color. I glued it behind just to make it look like the seat is a little bit different color as well, the back of it. I did not want white, so I used a little bit of a cream color. So I love the green with the blue. For the lampshade, as I mentioned, I used orange, which specifically I used spice cider. And for the that part of the lampshade, I used champagne foil cardstock from Concord and Ninth. And it has 2 layers on it. It has, I used yellow to make it look like the light coming from it, and then the orange on top. And then this base piece, I used 2 different colors as well, the nutmeg and then the cream color. I did find it easier to adhere the lamp minus the base piece first. It's easier to add the base piece on after, but I didn't know that until I made this here. And for the table, I'm layering that up. I changed my mind several times on the color. I started with a blue. I wanted the same sort of blue, so I used blueberry cardstock for the bottom base piece. And then I used white, which you'll see I changed my mind. So here's where I realized the base piece is a little hard to adhere on. You want to get it where you want first. So it was easy to rip off and just redo. So I add that light cream color or wheat color to the top of the table. So I decided the lamp looked better coming off the other side, so I just recut it out the other way. And like I said, had I not put the base piece on, it would have been easier, but it was easy to rip off. Here I pulled out potted shelves. Love this little mini Delight stamp and die that they have. I end up using it in other cards as well, which you'll see on my channel. So I'm opening this for the first time, pulling out all the dies. I decided I wanted a little plant on that table. Something needed to go on the table. So I thought this little plant would be perfect, and I had not used this stamp and die yet. So for at least this project, I used the die set. So here's where I changed my mind again, and I use, I believe it's honeycomb cardstock, because I thought the orange, it would be good to use an orange vase to tie in that orange again. And so I wanted to change the base of the table. So now I decided I wanted to put a little bit of like what might be considered a flooring, just to give it a little different color. Masked it off with some scrapbook.com mint tape, and I pulled out Distress ink. I ended up going with frayed burlap and a little bit of espresso. Put down a base color just using a blending brush here. And now I decided to pull out the stencils that come in with that ALTENEW Cozy Spaces, just to give it a little bit of lines on the back. So I'm just kind of moving that over, making it a little bit darker. I don't want this to look perfect. And so I'm going over it again just to kind of mute it out so there's not real definition in the lines. Cleaning up my space, my craft mat with some alcohol, and I cleaned off my stencil with some as well. And now I want to use a Spellbinders rectangle die to cut out a card front. If I were to make this card again, I would have cut that out first, but I wanted to glue down my table so I could get that perfect edge with my table, because I knew I was going to cut the edge of the table off with that die. It ended up being thick because I changed my mind so many times. The table had a little bit of thickness to it. So you'll see that it kind of bent the cardstock, but I'll just show you how I fixed it here. Here I'm giving you a closer look. It kind of bent that table. So I just cut out another piece and glued it to the top. And I actually really liked the look of this. I glued the blue layer as well, put it a little bit higher up. And I ended up really liking this because it had that thickness to it. It has a little bit of, it's popped up a little. So I wanted my plant popped up even a little bit more, add a little bit of foam tape to the back and a little bit of wet glue and glued that down. And I just think that plant, that vase and plant is perfect for that little table. And I love how the greens match the orange with the blue. I just love this color combination. So once I glue my lamp down, now it's easier to glue the base piece with it, get that in place. that little piece is so thin, I added my wet glue and then dabbed it off on a piece of scrap paper. I thought about popping the chair up, but the legs are so thin I wouldn't have been able to pop those up unless I did a few layers of cardstock with them, so I decided to glue that directly onto the card base. So now that this card has kind of that retro feel, I pulled out a stamp that I thought went well with it, also from the collection, and it says Hugs. I use my VersaFine Claire, what is it? I have it right behind me. VersaFine Claire Nocturne ink, and stamped a couple times the word Hugs on a piece of transparency that I was easily able to clean off, just to make sure that it was straight. I was happy with the placement. So I stamped that down twice. Super happy with how that turned out. And being that I've never used these stamps, I went ahead and just kind of conditioned them with my finger, stamped them a couple of times to get a good impression. So now it says Sending Hugs. I wanted to add that to a blue card base, as you can see. So I'm using Blueberry, again from Concord and 9th, and wanted to pop that with a little bit of black. So I did about a 1/8 inch border of black cardstock under that. And instead of turning this into a full card base, I'm using just a layer so I don't waste any of that blueberry cardstock. And I'll adhere the entire thing onto a white card base. So I'm using some double-sided tape. I like using double-sided tape when I'm trying to get it even, because you can just release the top piece of paper, line up the card front the way you want, and then release the back of the paper. Hope that makes sense the way I'm saying it. Oh, and I apologize. I did put this on, I forgot that I changed my mind. I put this on a black card base. And as you saw, I did add some foam tape behind my layered pieces, added a little bit of wet glue so I could easily adhere that down and have a little movement. And now I'm using my scoreboard to pop that entire thing on the card base, and also using a scrap piece of paper in case any of that black was still wet. So I did stamp the inside with Nothing is Impossible with God, praying for you. This is going to a friend whose husband is battling cancer. Here's what I was talking about, where you just remove the one piece. You can kind of get it where you want. Once you're happy with that, then you can take off the backing piece for the rest and usually get it straight. So here I'm just sharing a little bit of the next card that I made. I made this for my aunt. I used that blue flower paper. I thought that looked like the retro wallpaper. I thought that went really well, and I added a little bit of a floor with 2 of the chairs, the blue chairs with pillows on them. I'll give you a better look here. And then here's another smaller card I made. The card base itself is 3 1/8, at least the yellow piece, 3 1/8 by 4 3/8. This is honeycomb cardstock by Concord and 9th. I do add a white matting piece behind that, and then I put that on a blueberry card base that is about 4 7/8 by 3 5/8. And I'm using the Potted Shelves stamp and die. Once I made that first vase, I was addicted to making these. Like I said, you'll see other videos with them. And I, again, love this color combination. I love most of Concord and 9th's color combinations. Their cardstocks go so well together. So I have blueberry for the blue, spiced cider for the orange, and then I used avocado and artichoke for the plants. And then I used, I believe it was espresso for the shelves. So this is just a little note card. I made a happy birthday card out of it using a small stamp here in a minute. Again, those reverse tweezers are great. So this die set also comes with these little flowers. So I thought about adding some pink and white. I end up going with just all white on there, and I think also a cream would look good, but I did like the pop of white. And like I had mentioned earlier, I put another layering piece of white behind it just to tie that in. So using my wax tip and my fine tip glue bottle, I just kind of placed those all in, stamped out happy birthday, and cut it out with a little bit of a die and popped it up of the same color. So here's a closer look at these cards. So different than what Altenew has done in the past. I really like these. And like I said, this one's a little busy. I knew that my aunt would like it. I did a little bit of like a baseboard there. I embossed the pillows that sit on the couch. And I also completed the inside that said thinking of you with another one of those vases with some silver cardstock. So thank you so much for stopping by. Check the description box for any products that I used. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section. Hope you have a great day.